Good morning. Today we get to read a book called Go Fly a Kite, Ben Franklin, by Peter and Connie Roop. This is a scholastic book biography. Introduction. Ben Franklin is a very famous American. He was a printer, an inventor, and a community and national leader. Do you know how he made history? Ben Franklin was born in Boston. Do you know which city claims Ben as its hero? Ben Franklin made history with the kite flying experiment. Do you know he used a metal key in his experiment? Ben Franklin invented many things. Do you know he gave away his inventions? Ben Franklin went to elementary school, but never to college. Do you know that he still received college degrees? For much of his life, Ben Franklin was called Dr. Franklin. Do you know why? Ben Franklin worked hard all his life. Do you know why he retired from business when he was only 42 years old? Ben Franklin is American. Do you know he lived for more than 20 years overseas? Ben Franklin loved to read. Do you know he created the first joinable library? Ben Franklin loved to swim. Do you know what he invented to help him swim faster? Ben Franklin enjoyed writing letters. Do you know what job he had that helped him mail letters? Ben Franklin signed the Declaration of Independence. Do you know what 3 other documents he signed that created the United States? Answers to these questions and many more lie in who Ben Franklin was before he made history. Chapter 1. Ben Franklin is born. Sunday, January 17th, 1706 was cold and sunny in Boston, Massachusetts colony. The blue ball sign at 17 Milk Street swung in the chilly breeze. Downstairs, Josiah Franklin poured hot wax to make candles. Upstairs, Abiah Franklin held her newborn son. The baby was the 15th Franklin child. Yes, you heard me right, 15. 1-5. Josiah and Abiah named him Benjamin, after Josiah's favorite brother, Benjamin Franklin. Baby Ben Franklin would grow up to make history. Baby Ben Franklin had 14 brothers and sisters. They were Elizabeth, Samuel, Hannah, Josiah, Anne, John, Peter, Mary, James, Sarah, Ebenezer, Thomas, Lydia, and Jane. Josiah and Abiah had 2 more children after Ben. 2 of Ben's brothers had died before he was born. The Franklin house was crowded and noisy. Ben watched his busy family. Something was always happening. There was always somebody cooking, cleaning, washing, or ironing. Someone was always reading, playing games, making candles or soap, or spinning wool. Someone was always talking or singing. At night, friends stopped by to talk with Josiah Franklin. Josiah was poor, but he was respected. People listened to what he had to say about religion, family, and politics. If someone was in trouble, Josiah gladly gave advice. Josiah invited special people to share Franklin meals. He wanted his children to hear good conversations and to be curious about their world. Ben remembered being so interested in the conversations that he forgot what he had eaten. After dinner, Josiah played his violin and sang hymns. Ben explored his busy world. He was curious, especially about books. There are only a few pictures. I will show them to you. He watched his family reading and wanted to learn this skill. Ben taught himself how to read. By age 5, Ben was reading the Bible, sermons, newspapers, and every book he could get his hands on. Later, Ben wrote, "I do not remember when I could not read. All his life, Ben Franklin loved words. He read them, wrote them, printed them, and spoke them. In 1712, when he was 6 years old, Ben's family moved to a bigger house. Mr. Franklin hung his blue ball sign over his new shop and home. Here he made candles and soap and raised his large family. Ben Franklin lived here for 6 years. The Franklins lived near the center of Boston. Their home was close to the docks where ships arrived from all around the world. Ben liked to stare at the tall ships. He dreamed of one day becoming a sailor. When Ben was young, Boston was the biggest, busiest town in America. There were things to see and do all around the town. Carpenters built buildings, blacksmiths hammered metal at their glowing forges, farmers rolled into town with wagons loaded with fruits, vegetables, and meat. Pigs rooted for food. Sailors strolled down the cobblestone streets. Bricklayers laid rows of red bricks for more homes, shops, and markets. Shopkeepers greeted customers. Children ran errands and played games. Boston fascinated Ben. He learned a lot from wandering the streets. Soon he learned even more. In 1713, when he was 7 years old, Ben's love of reading turned into a lifelong love of reading. A love of writing, Ben taught himself how to write, and he wrote poems. He begged his father to send his poems to his Uncle Benjamin Franklin in England. Uncle Benjamin told Ben how much he enjoyed the poems. Ben was thrilled. He learned about the pleasures of writing. That same year, Ben learned an important lesson about money. Ben was given some coins to spend on anything he liked. He dashed to the toy store. Along the way, he met a boy blowing a whistle. Ben enjoyed the loud music the boy played. Ben wanted his own whistle. Ben gave the boy all his coins and ran home proudly tooting his new whistle. The noisy whistle annoyed Ben's family, but he was pleased. That is, until Ben told his family how much he had paid for the whistle. They laughed at him, saying they could have bought 4 whistles for what Ben paid for 1. Ben cried, thinking about the other toys he could have bought. Making wise purchases was a lesson Ben never forgot. When he saw people wasting money, Ben reminded himself, "Poor man, you paid too much for your whistle." Chapter 2. Ben learns more lessons. Ben was fun to play with. He had many friends. Ben was their leader. The boys went fishing, swimming, boating, canoeing. Ben admitted that sometimes he led his friends into scrapes. One scrape taught Ben a lesson about honesty. Ben and his friends were trying to catch minnows in a pond. They trampled the mud so much that the water turned brown. They could not see the fish. Ben noticed a pile of stones being used to build a house, and he had an idea. Why not build our own dock with the stones, Ben thought. That evening, Ben and his friends worked like ants building their rock dock. The next morning, the workers found all their stones missing. They saw Ben's dock and realized that Ben and his friends had taken their rocks. The boys had to return all the heavy rocks. Ben explained to his father that their work had been useful. Mr. Franklin explained to Ben that he had stolen someone's property. Ben said that his father convinced me that nothing was useful which was not honest. Ben learned another lesson at the pond. When he was curious about something, he tried to understand it. He wanted to learn how to swim. In those days, few people knew how to swim. There was no one to teach Ben, so he taught himself. While swimming, Ben learned another lesson. Sometimes Ben swam so much he grew tired. He decided to solve his problem. He watched ducks swim with their webbed feet. If ducks could swim so well, Ben Franklin could too. Ben made paddles and attached them to his hands and feet. The paddles were hard to use. Ben had the right idea, but it didn't work as well as he expected. So he tried another idea. Ben enjoyed flying kites. Sometimes they pulled him forward. Would my kite pull me through the water? Ben wondered. He would find out. Ben waded into the pond. The wind pulled his kite high into the sky. Holding the string tightly, Ben floated on the water. Slowly the kite pulled Ben across the pond. His kite experiment had worked. Ben learned another lifelong lesson. If at first you don't succeed, try again. But not all of Ben's lessons came from his outdoor experiences. In 1714, when Ben was 8 years old, his father said it was time for Ben to go to school. In those days, few children went to school. Most boys learned a trade from their fathers. Most girls learned how to take good care of a house so one day they could manage their own homes. Josiah Franklin knew that Ben was very intelligent. He planned for Ben to be a minister when he grew up. So Ben had to go to school, including college. Ben went to Boston Latin School. Soon Ben was at the top of his class. He did so well that he skipped the next grade. Ben didn't have the chance to skip another grade. Josiah didn't have enough money to send Ben to Boston Latin School. Ben went to George Bronwell School, which he liked. Mr. Bronwell taught writing and math. Ben's writing skills improved, and especially his handwriting, but Ben struggled with math. Josiah changed his mind. Ben wouldn't become a minister. Ben would become a candle maker, like Josiah. In 1716, Ben worked in his father's shop. He snipped candle wicks and poured steamy wax into candle molds. He melted fat in hot pots and made soap. He ran errands and sold things. 10-year-old Ben and 60-year-old Josiah worked 16 long hours every day except Sunday. Ben hated almost every boring minute of it. He needed something else to keep his curious mind busy. Chapter 3. Ben becomes an apprentice. Ben turned to books. Ben decided that if he couldn't go to school, he would teach himself. Ben read every chance he could. One of his favorite books was The Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. Ben liked the book so much that whenever he had a little money, he wisely spent it on a set of Bunyan's books. Ben read about famous Greeks and Romans. He read about earthquakes, famous women, Robinson Crusoe. He bought 50 small, inexpensive history books. After 2 years, Ben was tired of the candle and soap business. He told his father that he wanted to be a sailor. Josiah saw how unhappy his son was, but he said that Ben could not be a sailor. He agreed that Ben could quit the candle business if he learned another trade. A boy had to have a trade to earn a living when he was older. Ben couldn't decide what trade he wanted to learn. In 1718, when Ben was 12 years old, Josiah took him on long walks around Boston to look at different trades. That way, Ben could pick which trade he could learn. Ben watched carpenters hammering and bricklayers spreading mortar. He saw rope makers twisting rope and sail makers stitching sails. He observed cobblers making shoes and blacksmiths shaping horseshoes. He watched coopers building barrels and millers grinding grain. He saw shipwrights constructing ships and silversmiths polishing silver. Ben enjoyed watching the tradesmen working. Ben said, "It has ever since been a pleasure for me to see good workmen handle their tools." Ben learned enough from his observations to be able to do jobs around his own home when he grew older. Little Ben also learned how to make little machines for my experiments, a skill he used to become a famous scientist. But Ben didn't see any trade he wanted to learn. So Josiah made up Ben's mind for him, something Ben did not like. Ben would become a cutler and make knives. Ben went to work for his cousin Samuel Franklin. Ben was home 3 days later when Samuel asked for money to teach Ben. Josiah said he would not pay, especially since Samuel's father was living in the overcrowded Franklin house for free. Suddenly, Josiah realized what trade was just right for Ben. Ben loved to read and write. Ben could be a printer. Who better to teach Ben than James, Ben's big brother? In 1718, when he was 12 years old, Ben signed an agreement with James. Ben would work for James until 1727, when Ben was 21 years old. Ben would not be paid until the last year. James agreed to feed Ben, give him a home, provide him with clothes, and teach him the printer's trade. Ben beamed. He was a printer's apprentice. At first, Ben didn't like being a printer's apprentice. James gave Ben the worst jobs. Ben had to be up before dawn to carry in wood and build fires. He pumped water for drinking and cleaning. He ran errands and swept the floor. He waited on customers. Ben did everything but print. Ben was eager to learn how to print a pamphlet, almanac, sermon, or book. He watched James set lead letters in wooden trays to make words. He saw him roll back ink onto the letters and carefully place a sheet of paper onto the inked letters. Ben watched James pull the heavy handle, pressing the paper onto the letters. Finally, James taught Ben these skills. Ben learned quickly. Soon he was setting the type to spell words, inking the paper, and handling the press like an expert. The work was hard, but Ben didn't mind. He was strong from swimming and easily lifted the heavy boxes of letters. The days were long. James and Ben worked 15 hours a day. Ben didn't mind. He had worked longer hours for his father. All his life, Ben was involved with printing. When he was 75 years old and living in France, Ben had a printing press. Ben had a lifelong love of words. Ben kept reading too. He woke up early to read before the shop became busy. He read by candlelight late at night, but when the shop was empty, he read by candlelight late at night when the shop was empty. He read on Sundays when everyone was at church. Books were expensive, however, and Ben had little money. He borrowed books from friends and family. Still, he couldn't get enough books. One of Ben's friends was a bookseller's apprentice. Ben begged his friends to lend him a book after the bookseller's shop closed each evening. Ben stayed up late and got up even earlier to finish reading the book. Ben returned the book to his friend before the bookshop opened in the morning. Matthew Adams, a frequent customer at the printing shop, saw how much Ben enjoyed reading. He kindly let Ben borrow books from his own collection. Ben read essays, science and history books, and novels. I think I'll go ahead and stop there. We will start at chapter 4 tomorrow. So just remember, like Ben Franklin, hard work makes you feel good. It's cool to be kind and ask, what can I do to help? Ciao.